Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to Module 4. In the last module, you planned, outlined, wrote, and edited your source magnet report. You also added visuals that help make your data more credible and will lead to more shares and links. In this module, Module 4, is all about promotion. Like any piece of content that you publish, promotion for your source magnet report is key. And in this module, you'll learn exactly how it's done. The good news is that promoting a source magnet is 100 times easier than trying to promote a list post, a case study, ultimate guide, or any other piece of traditional blog content. Why is that? Well, it's because your source magnet is really interesting. Think about it. To make your source magnet a reality, you collected and analyzed original data. Data that no one knew about before. Then present that data in an interesting way in your source magnet report. This is original content in the real sense of the word. Unlike most content, which is just regurgitated crap, you're putting out something that's actually original. What you published has never been done before in that exact way, which helps your content instantly stand out. In fact, I noticed the difference in how people responded to my first source magnet, my 1 million Google search engine ranking factor study, right away. I used to have to send hundreds of outreach emails to get my older blog content in front of enough people to make a dent in terms of shares and links. But this time, my source magnet pretty much promoted itself. Now, yes, it did take some work to get the word out, but it was literally 10 times easier than trying to promote a definitive guide. So yeah, promoting your source magnet is important, and it does take a little bit of work. But I think you'll find that the entire content promotion process is a lot easier when you're promoting something really cool like a source magnet report. And the first promotional strategy that I want to share with you, which is the focus of this lesson, is called the commentary technique. I wanted to lead off with this strategy because if you end up using it, you'll actually want to incorporate this strategy into your actual source magnet report. You'll see what I mean in a minute. I also wanted to cover this strategy because it works well even if you have zero audience. So if your site has no email list, no Twitter followers, and no Facebook presence whatsoever, you can still use this strategy to get results. With that, let's dive right into the strategy itself. So a while back, I got this random outreach email completely out of the blue. I'd never heard of the guy that sent me this email, Kyle Byers, or his blog, Growth Badger. But I had to hand it to Kyle. This was an excellent outreach email. Not just because it was super personalized, even though it was. The main reason that this email was good was that it worked. Specifically, Kyle got me to contribute a quote to his niche survey source magnet report, and once the source magnet report was live, convinced me to share it on Twitter. The question, how did he do it? As it turned out, Kyle used a promotional strategy called the commentary technique. Now, before we get into the specific steps, here's a high-level overview of how this approach works. First, you want to finish writing your source magnet report, which if you finish module 3, should be pretty much ready to go. Next, you want to find influential people in your space that cover some of the topics that you looked into for your source magnet. Then reach out to a handful of those people and ask them to give their thoughts about one specific topic that they're most interested in. Finally, once it's published, share your source magnet report with those influential people. And if you follow the previous steps, some, if not all of them, will share it when it's published. In fact, that's exactly what happened in my case. I contributed a quote to Kyle, and because I felt invested in the process, I ended up sharing his source magnet on Twitter. Now, like I said, I'll give you the tactical steps later in this lesson and in the worksheet. But for now, I want to quickly show you why this strategy works so well. First, when you get an influencer to contribute a quote, they feel like they're part of your report. That's because they are. For example, when I saw my quote that I gave in Kyle's source magnet report, I was like, okay, so I guess I'm involved now. I might as well share it. Think about how different this is from traditional email outreach. With traditional outreach, you find people that might be interested in your content, send it to them, and then hope that they share it. But with the commentary technique, you're not just sending people a link and hoping for the best. Instead, you're actually involving them in the process. And you're doing it in a way that doesn't take up a ton of their time. All they need to do is contribute a quick quote, and they're done. Second, having influencers contribute adds a a ton of credibility to your source magnet report. Specifically, by being involved in your source magnet report's creation, some of that person's influence will rub off on you. In fact, this credibility rub-off effect is one of the main reasons that Kyle's source magnet did so well, even though he had no audience to speak of. And as you go through his report, you'll see quotes from well-known people in the marketing industry like WordStream founder Larry Kim, Andrew Warner of Mixergy, and more. These quotes rub off some influence and credibility to Kyle's content, which makes it more likely that people will share it and link to it. In fact, that source magnet report has backlinks from authority sites like Campaign Monitor and Podia. Sites like that don't usually link to a brand new site that they've never heard of before, but they link to Kyle's site largely because he was able to borrow some influence from well-known people in the industry. As Kyle told me, quote, "Getting expert opinions was a key factor in helping my post on blogging trends and statistics get more than 10 times the attention of anything I published before it, including 800 shares in the first week it was live. And I've seen the commentary technique get similar results over and over again in all sorts of different industries." With that, let's dive right into the steps. Step number 1 is to finish your source magnet report draft. So yeah, your first step is to get your source magnet report draft ready. Now, it doesn't need to be 100% ready at this stage, and you don't need to have your visuals quite yet. The key here is that you have your key stats and findings ready to go. This is important because you're going to ask your influential people to comment on your key stats. So these do need to be ready before you reach out to them. So once your draft is ready, it's time for step number 2, which is to find 5 spots for expert quotes. In other words, you want to find a place in your source magnet report where an expert quote would make sense. One tip that makes this step a little bit easier is to just look for places where an influencer could add context to one of your findings. As you might remember from Module 3, you want to include background info, results, and context for each of your key stats. Now, the background info and results are pretty straightforward, but the context section is sometimes a little bit trickier, especially if you're not an expert on that specific topic. And that's where someone that's really knowledgeable in that space could add a ton of value. Plus, unlike with the background and the results, which are objective, the context is someone's opinion. And influencers love giving their opinion. After all, who doesn't? And if you already wrote the context underneath each subheading, no worries. You can just add the influencer's quote to that section. In fact, that's what Kyle did for his source magnet. He just wrote the report as normal and just added people's quotes after his report was already written. So yeah, there's no need to overthink this step. Just scan your report and identify a few places where a quote from an expert would make sense. Then move on to step number 3, which is to create your influencer list. Now it's time to find people to provide the 5 quotes that you need. Specifically, you want to find 5 people that will be a great fit for each of the 5 key stats that you're gathering quotes for. For example, in Kyle's case, he reached out to me about YouTube. I have a decent YouTube following, and it's a topic that I'm interested in, which made me a good fit for that specific quote. If Kyle had asked me about something that I'm not as interested in, like Facebook organic reach, I probably would have ignored his email. So yeah, you want to make sure that you find someone that would be a great fit for each specific quote that you need. And when you ask people to comment on a topic that they're interested in, your outreach is going to be well received. How you find the right people depends a lot on you and your specific niche, and how familiar you are with the movers and shakers in your industry. For example, if you're someone that's worked in your industry for years, you can probably come up with these names off the top of your head. But if you're new to the space or you run an agency that runs marketing for one of your clients, you may not know who to reach out to at first. Fortunately, you can easily find the right people using 2 simple strategies. First, Google a few keywords that describe the key stat that you want to get a quote for. Then see whose content pops up in the search results. These are all usually great fits. For example, let's say that you wanted to get a quote for your key stat. 15% of Americans say that they've tried the keto diet. Well, you'd search for terms like keto diet and see who's ranking on the first page. Now, one quick note here as you go through this process. You do want to focus on single author blogs that have one person that writes most of the content. In other words, for this set of results, you'd want to skip over a mega site with dozens of authors like Healthline. Instead, focus on blogs that have a single contributor. contributor. You could also do the same thing on Twitter. Search for a keyword related to your key stat, hit the people tab, and you'll see people with that exact word or phrase in their Twitter bio. Now that you have your influencer list, it's time for step number 4, make your pitch. Now, one of the main reasons that this strategy works so well is that each email that you send is highly personalized, as they should be. This isn't the type of email outreach campaign where you need to send 200 emails. In that case, you probably do need to use email scripts. But here you're reaching out to 5 people, maybe 6 or 7 if you don't hear back from a few people that you reach out to, which means that you have an opportunity to send everybody an insanely personalized outreach email. Now, as I said, I don't recommend using a script here. There's really no need. Now, that said, in general, you do want to let the person know that you're looking for a quote and give them a question that's super easy to answer. That's going to be the same for every email that you send. Again, Kyle's email is a great example of this. Now, my only nitpicky feedback on his email is that it's just a little bit too long. Kyle could have probably got the same message across using 2 to 3 fewer lines. But again, because this email was so personalized and he sent me a question that was super easy to answer, it didn't matter that it was just a little bit long. So once you get your quotes in, add them to your Source Magnet report, and it's time for the last step. We are live. This step is pretty simple. All you need to do is send a quick heads up that your post is live to everyone that contributed a quote. Here's an example of how you want this email to look. See how I don't ask for a share? That's a Jedi mind trick that actually leads to more shares. Think about it. You already got in touch with this person, they contributed a quote, and you're letting them know that it's live. There's really no need to ask for a share here, which can come off as a little bit pushy. I mean, look at it this way. These influencers aren't stupid. If they like your Source Magnet report, and if you follow the steps from Module 3 they will, then they'll happily share it. And with that, you're done. To quickly recap, you learned that content promotion can be tough and a real grind. That's mostly because no one's gonna get super excited about a list post or a case study. But that's not the case with a Source Magnet. With a Source Magnet, you're bringing something fresh and new to the table, something that people in your niche will want to read and share. And the commentary technique is one of the best ways to spread the word about your Source Magnet report. That's because instead of just asking influencers to share, you're getting them actively involved in the process and committed early on. That way, when your report goes live, they'll feel like they contributed because they did. And looking ahead to the next lesson, lesson 2, you're gonna learn how to use the data-driven press release to get your study in front of the people who matter. But for now, you know what I'm gonna say? It's worksheet time. The worksheet below this video will help you execute the steps that I just outlined. So go ahead and grab the worksheet, and I'll see you in the next lesson.